The Creator is now out playing in theaters. So this is a new film from director Gareth Edwards. He did films like Godzilla 2014 and Rogue One: Star Wars Story. And this movie takes place in a future where AI and humanity is kind of at odds with each other. There's a war going on because AI could be the next evolution of humanity. And in the midst of this war, you got a soldier played by John David Washington. He's going after a weapon that the AI possessed that could end the war and humanity as we know it. And it just so happens to be in the form of a cute, adorable little kid. Alright, so easily the best part of The Creator for me was the world that Gareth Edwards had created on the screen. Because I'm sure that you've heard it 1,000 times that this is an original, finally a new original sci-fi film for this generation. It is a masterpiece, it is great. This is one of the all-time great sci-fi movies of all time. Now, do I agree with that assessment? No, I really do not. And there's a couple reasons for that I'll get into later on in this review, but to start off with the great stuff in this movie is this world building that Gareth Edwards is doing. Because it's true that this is a brand new original world created in sci-fi in quite a long time. And the work that's been done to build and flesh out this world on screen is so evident. It's incredible. Visually, this movie is astonishing. It only had a budget of like $80 million, and it looks better than some of the big blockbuster $200 million films that we've been getting this year. It's very rare that you can say this, but you can see the money on screen. You can see the passion. You can see all of the little detail that went into creating this world. And it is one of those worlds that really sucked me into it. I was very invested and I felt like I was transported to another galaxy while sitting in this theater auditorium and watching this screen. And at the same time, Gareth Edwards did a phenomenal job fleshing out and showing us this war depicted between the AI and the humans. The war is more of a backdrop to the story, but man, did they do a great job of showing you this war. And not only did they do a great job showing this war, they did a great job depicting both sides of this war. One thing that I really did appreciate about The Creator was that there really wasn't one side that I was against or for. Because going into this movie, you think, okay, a war between humans and AI. Obviously, the AI guys are bad guys. But no, the movie does not represent the AI characters in this film as the bad guys. If anything, they're more like refugees. They're more of the underdogs that you're secretly rooting for. And that's something that completely subverted my expectations going into this movie, because there's a lot of themes in this movie about prejudice and stuff like that. But just looking at this movie on the surface level, this is almost a pro-AI movie. This movie is almost saying like, hey, AI might not be so bad, maybe we shouldn't reject it right away. And I thought that that was kind of a risky message to be putting out into the world right now in our culture, and especially in Hollywood when you got the writers and the actors fighting against AI. But it was also something that really subverted my expectations, and it's something that I did not think the movie was going to do, that it did, that actually worked kind of well for me. But even with all that said, this movie is not really a war movie. This movie is not action-packed the entire time. This movie has some slow moments. This movie is a little bit of a slow burn, and that does kind of bring me back into my negatives with this movie, and unfortunately, they're not few. Because while I was really invested in this world and the way that they fleshed it out I thought was brilliant, I wasn't that invested in our characters. While putting this movie together, I feel like Gareth Edwards and his team focused more on the world than they did with the characters, because there was a lot of stuff about the characters that felt very underdeveloped to me. For a sci-fi film that's being hailed as a masterpiece by some people right now, this movie followed a lot of tropes and a lot of predictable cliches that we've seen in many, many other sci-fi films in the past. And that's definitely going to vary for who is watching the movie. Like, if you haven't seen many sci-fi films, if this is your very first sci-fi film, I think your mind is going to be completely blown. You're going to think everything on the screen is amazing. But if you're someone like me who has seen a fair share of sci-fi films, you are going to be watching the screen, and there's going to be a lot of flashes coming through your mind of Blade Runner, District 9, Avatar, Star Wars, even Logan. And I'm not going to judge the movie on the merit of, does it compare well to these other movies that have done what this movie is doing? No, I'm not going to compare it that way. But just looking at the movie itself and how it's doing these things, they could have been a little bit more fleshed out. I feel like they could have been given a little bit more time to really breathe. Because you look at the main characters, Jonathan, played by John David Washington, and this little AI girl, there's supposed to be this bonding thing that happens with them as they go through this journey. Because John David Washington's character starts off very prejudiced, very against AI. He doesn't see them as people. Even though these AI beings, they have more human traits and human characteristics than you would have expected from an AI machine, he still just sees them as circuits and as robots, and he has no problem disposing of them whatsoever. But when he comes across this weapon of AI in the form of this little girl, there's a journey that they go on that's supposed to develop this kind of more friendship, this bond. And a big problem with that for me is that you never really did get to see much of that journey. The reluctant adoptive father figure is nothing new in movies, but there's always got to be that moment in these stories where you see the two characters connect, where you see what really bonds them together. There's always a scene, there's always a moment that does that. And in this movie, I just didn't think they nailed that scene very well. For example, this scene is in the trailer. You see them on the train. They're talking about heaven and how he won't go to heaven because he's not a good person, and she won't go to heaven because she's not a person.
We can't go to heaven because you're not good. And I'm not a person.
In the movie, when that scene came up, it felt like it came up, first of all, way too soon with no setup, and then they kind of quickly montage through a couple things to show that they have gotten to a place where they respect each other, but it didn't give me the time to buy into that, to really go on that journey with the characters. And I'm not saying everyone's going to feel that way. I'm just saying that's how I felt. Because in this movie, there's a lot of emotional moments that they really want to impact the audience. And while I could tell that these emotional moments, they felt like they were really well done, because there was that lack of a foundation of the relationships for me personally, the emotion in those moments felt hollow. It just felt weak. And that also comes with just how ambitious this movie is trying to be, because this movie is juggling a lot of themes, a lot of ideas, while also presenting this grand epic story in this 2 hour and 15-minute runtime. But because the movie is trying to do so much, there is also a lot of exposition in this movie. And as I said, when this movie slows down and we got all these exposition scenes and there's a lack of action happening and I'm not as invested in the story or the characters as I was in the world that they've built, yeah, at times, I'm not going to lie, this movie did kind of drag for me. But even with all that said, as I don't agree with a lot of people out there saying that this movie is a masterpiece or even that it's great, I did think that this was good. This was a very solid sci-fi film. There's a lot of creativity put into it. You are dazzled every time you are looking at the screen. The cinematography, the visuals, they're just all so amazing. And I will say that for the majority of the movie, I did find myself pretty entertained. And so while this movie did not work 100% for me, I will say that because of those reasons, I did walk out having a good time. I liked the movie, and I'm going to give it a solid recommend for a solid sci-fi film. Anyway, guys, those are all my thoughts and opinions on The Creator. But what did you guys think of The Creator? Did you think it was a masterpiece? Did you like it less than me or about the same? Comment down below. Let me know. I want to hear all your thoughts and opinions about this movie, guys. And if you're new here and you haven't heard, we have a goal on this channel. We want to hit 2,500 subscribers before the end of the year. If you're new here and you love talking movies, you love talking about entertainment in general, why don't you go on and click that subscribe button on your way out? We can't hit this goal without you, and we'd love to have you join our little community over here. As always, guys, thank you so much for hearing me out, and I hope to talk to you guys again real soon.